In northeast Oklahoma, there's something strange going on. For 100 years or more, people have reported seeing something terrifying, something they can't explain.
At some point in about a mile, a little under a mile and a half, here on our right, we're going to see County Road 40, I think.
Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics, where we talk about some really weird stuff, and Joe the scientist explains how it's not possible, or maybe it is. I'm Lynn, and
I'm Joe.
Just south of Joplin, Missouri, on an old farm road, people have seen this phenomenon, since the 1800s. Scientists, universities, and just regular people have flocked to the area, trying to determine just what it is. It's reportedly a light from no known source that behaves erratically.
Yeah, and see, Ron, you can see how close the freeway is.
I'd heard about it, so when the author of a book about it was doing a presentation at the library back in October, my grandson and I went to hear what he had to say. The book is called The Ozark Spook Light by Larry Wood. Fun story, when I went to look for the Ozark Spook Light book, which I had purchased, I couldn't find it. I searched everywhere. I was driving myself insane. And in fact, it was on my phone because I bought it as a Kindle book. So just one of those silly little old-timer things. So the spook light was first noticed back before there was an interstate highway or even cars with headlights like we have now. The light is reportedly bright, like a single headlight, and it bobs around, but generally it comes straight towards the person on that road. So we went out to investigate, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it was dark. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you'll see some images from that trip. While we didn't see the spook light, we did get some ideas about it.
Yeah.
When I was at that library thing, it was amazing how many people in the audience had an experience with the spook light. You know, ordinarily, I don't know, you just wouldn't imagine that many people would be saying, I saw it, and this is what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it is biased because it's the people who have gone to the thing.
That's true. They were already attracted to go into the thing.
But they had to have gone out there and waited and seen the light, which probably is pretty convincing. I mean, if you go out and you see the light and you can't explain it, then you're much more likely to be a person who then seeks it out in the future.
Several people actually lived on that road when they were kids, and they said they saw it all the time. Mm-hmm. One guy said he saw it one of the times he saw it in a tree, and then it moved down from the tree and it moved around erratically in the road. One lady said she went out to go parking with her boyfriend, and this is like, I think she said 1960s. She was an older lady, and so they're parking along that road, and the thing came down the road, and first they're just watching it, and then it got onto the hood of the car and bounced around. Okay, these seemed like perfectly normal people. They didn't seem like they're crazy people. They didn't seem like they were making it up. That alone, having listened to their stories, that's what made me want to go out there to Spook Light Road. Mm-hmm. So the author of that book talked about how back in the 60s and 70s, there was an old guy that lived out there, and he opened up what he called a museum, which is actually sounded more like a hamburger joint, just a place for kids to come and play, pinball or something and eat and drink Cokes. And so he had lots of stories that people had told him about their own encounters with the spook light. In fact, Ron, who was along with us when we went out there, called his brother while we were out there and said, "Didn't you tell me you saw the spook light when you were a kid?" And he said when he was in high school, or not high school, he was in college, he went out with a bunch of friends, maybe on more than one occasion, I can't remember. Do you remember?
It sounded like multiple occasions.
And his advice was, just wait for it. It will appear.
Yeah,
just wait.
You might have to wait all night.
Yeah.
Oh.
And we did not. Also, I think we probably were inviting suspicion because we were going back and forth up that road.
Yeah, well, although to some degree I bet the people living there are used to it.
Well, back in the day, when that guy had his little Spook Light museum and hamburger joint, reportedly there were like 100 cars a night would go to that road and sit and watch the Spook Light. So this is what they say it did. It would appear and it's a long straight road, not flat road.
It's not flat. It's quite hilly.
It undulates, yeah. And they would see it off in the distance and it would come towards them, a single bright light. Now, the interesting thing about it is that when people first said they reported seeing it, it first appeared in a newspaper before everybody had cars. Certainly before headlights were as bright as they are now. Absolutely before there was an interstate highway there. Mm-hmm. Those are the explanations people say now. So scientists, researchers, just people, regular old people have gone out there and tried to figure out what it was. And they've determined that they believe that it's lights from the highway, and that the reason why it looks like it's bouncing around is because they're going over the hills. Except the highway isn't hilly.
Yeah, when we were there, there's just no way. I can't imagine any way that you would have a continuous light that's moving from a car on the highway. There are trees. It's hilly. It's
right.
There's not like a straight line.
Right. And supposedly, according to the guy that wrote the book, he said that up until, 20, 30 years ago, that road was thickly lined with trees. And as more houses have gone in and farms have grown, they've reduced the number of trees so that it's more open. But a long time ago, that was a wall of trees on both sides of that road. So it would have to be lined up perfectly. And the highway is perpendicular to it. It's not.
Yeah. Very perpendicular.
Yeah. So it's not like a car on the highway would be coming straight towards you for a while. Mm-hmm. It would just pass your line of vision.
And the highway is lower.
Yes.
Because you pass over it.
Yes, that's true.
You do go up a little bit before you pass over it, obviously, but it's I really can't see. I know that somebody supposedly went out there. I think we watched something on it. They went out there and they sat and they watched and they could see the lights on the highway, but it's not like, oh, it's coming right at you for a while. And so this light is going through these particular trees. It's like the highway is going basically perpendicular to you the whole time.
Right.
Maybe like, I don't know, somewhere tens of miles down in a straight line, there's an...
Okay, so we go over it, Ron. We're going to go right over the highway. What?
We're going to go over it?
Are we going over it?
Dirt road?
What?
That's nuts.
There's another road that goes straight towards you.
That still doesn't explain what it was back in the 1880s.
Yeah.
What was that?
And presuming that's like, it wasn't something else. It was the same spot.
Yeah.
And the people's memories of it weren't polluted by modern interpretations. Right. Presuming that's all true, and it's reasonable to assume that's all true, then the car stuff does not explain the earlier sightings.
No, absolutely not.
Yes.
Is it actually called 666?
South 666.
I did save the Kindle version of the book. I bookmarked it where there are some where people wrote about their experiences. Okay, so one of the experiences was a school bus full of children, and they were coming back from some event, and so it was dark. And the spook light came up to the bus, went in a window. The children screamed and ran out the door. Obviously, the bus driver had stopped. They screamed and ran away. They're all traumatized by it. Mass hysteria can explain only so much, but out of all of those people, you would think that somebody would have said, no, somebody screamed and then we all screamed, or it wasn't a light that came in through the window or whatever. Nobody. They all agreed. It was a light, came in through the window. They'd seen it from a distance. It approached the bus. It came in through the window. The children screamed. They ran out the bus. And the bus driver had stopped. So why would the bus driver stop if it was just a car light on the road?
I don't know. What's the next thing?
Okay.
Like some things are in this category, same category, like swamp lights maybe are gases coming up from decomposing plant material and igniting or fluorescing somehow.
Yeah, people have talked about that. But swamp gas doesn't move around like a ball of light.
True. And again, so this is one thing, you like presuming that people are not overly exaggerating. So I know this is very common from like the stuff we watch on TV and whatever, is people really exaggerate their folk tales, especially if they're not the one, if it's a secondhand story, if they're not the ones who experienced it, that things grow they become much bigger, you know, and things become exaggerated. Like, for instance, it's very possible that the Spook Light stories where it moves around and bounces around it was just actually like moving slightly and it was farther distance away and it kind of moved up and down.
Yeah.
That's totally possible. That's something people really do.
Yeah. In 1986, Keith Partain, who is a laboratory technician from Tulsa, Oklahoma, came up with his own theory about it. He said he'd been watching and studying it since 1979, and he concluded that what most people saw looking along Spook Light Road was actually and truly headlights from old Route 66. But he said there were real spook light sightings, and he believed they were a form of ball lightning that only appeared at 10 or 11 year intervals corresponding to a sunspot cycle.
Interesting. So it's more like the Northern Lights kind of thing. So the radiation from the sun striking the atmosphere, it makes, I mean...
He went on to say, ball lightning is an unusual phenomenon that consists of a ball of charged particles of ionized matter. But scientists don't understand why or how ball lightning exists, nor can they predict when or where it will appear.
As far as I know, it's loud, or
I would think it would be.
It makes noise,
and this does not make any noise.
You know, it makes me think like, okay, if you could reliably go out, like say next Tuesday we're gonna go out, and we know from experience we're going to see it. You know, if you can reliably do that, then it's a good idea to like take, for instance, an EMF detector.
Right.
EMF detector. This is a great case where you actually would want an EMF detector, a infrared camera, a regular camera, you know, a high definition like camera that you just leave on and you will record it. It's not like, oh, you know, I'll forget, you know. Microphone, perhaps multiple microphones, spread them around in case it comes near you.
Where's Josh Gates when we need him? Okay, so some people say that it's a light in the town of Quapaw. That's quite a few miles down the road. That doesn't make any sense because that wouldn't be moving towards you.
Yeah, it wouldn't be moving. Wouldn't be jumping or anything.
Yep.
Having been there are lights all over the place. I mean, everywhere. And
now there are.
And there's lots of traffic.
Now there is. And they put up that big tower and it has a light on it, which, you know, could confuse you.
Yeah.
One guy said he was arguing against the headlight theory in the summer of 1946, and he said it couldn't be. That light is only a block away, and you can't hear a motor. Somebody else said in 1955, it would just bounce around out there and keep me awake at night. You know, like someone would be out there with a big old light and sort of waving it around. This other person in 1955 said, and he was out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, he said, I turned around and there it was, just sitting there on the back of the car. It throwed off a good bit of light like an electric bulb close up to you. I took off in one big hurry. So, yeah, stories change as people tell them. And when other people hear them, they adopt them or they alter them or, you know, they misunderstand them. But I do think that to do a serious inquiry, which the university, I think Missouri Southern University has done it, and I think Pittsburgh University has done it, and I think that the Kansas City University has done it. But they were done by students, and they were done years ago. I think that if you had one thing, have somebody way down at the other end, as far as that road goes, with a bright light like we have now, which you didn't have then, and a cell phone. And while you're on the cell phone to somebody that's way up at the other end of Spook Light Road, up where that museum used to be, so you can communicate, you turn it on and the person says whether they can see it or not. I mean, that would be valuable. They didn't have cell phones when they did these studies. So what they would do is they would do a series of, blinks or whatever with it, and then they would come back together and talk about whether they saw them. And I think that if you had it on a cell phone, then if somebody said, well, I thought maybe I saw it, move it a little bit to the left, something like that. I think that would be valuable. I think that, like you said, where you had cameras that were on and leave them on continuously.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You could just put a camera out there and leave it on all the time.
Right.
But it's like, oh, maybe the spook light is also in the daylight. You just don't typically notice because the sun is so bright.
Yeah.
You might notice, though, on a camera.
You might.
I know that none of, like if somebody had the flashlight and they were pointing it from long, it wouldn't explain, assuming the stories are true, it wouldn't explain that people seeing them really close up.
No, it wouldn't. Okay, one thing that people have said is that generally the best sightings they've had have been when it was kind of humid out, but not raining, and a little overcast, which makes me think that some of the appearance could be reflecting off of clouds, or it could be refracting in moisture in the air.
For instance, you're slightly lower, there's a blob of mist above you, and then light shining through the mist, you can only then see the mist.
Right.
And it's moving around, it can do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
It just can't come lower than the shadow point, or else
but that
it would
still
disappear.
doesn't explain things like this. Ora Winfrey from Redding's Mill, for a booklet that was published about it in 1955. She said, I first saw the spook light back about 1911, before many cars existed in this area. I've seen it a number of times, even in rain and snow and at all hours of the night for the past 44 years. Okay, so headlights have changed substantially since 1911.
Yeah. Like modern headlights are really much brighter.
Yeah.
And much more directed than anything they would have had in 1911.
So a couple things that were brought up at that library presentation were, somebody said, well, could it be the headlight from a train? Because it appears as one single light, not two headlights. And there is, number one, there isn't a track that runs in that direction, straight towards the road. Number two, train tracks have to be at a certain grade. They can't undulate like that road undulates. They can't have that much of a difference in elevation. So that kind of blows that theory. The other thing that somebody brought up, it's only one light, and cars have two lights, except that from a distance, car lights kind of converge and appear just one light. So, take that into consideration. But the brightness of today's car lights don't do that like they used to do. And people are still seeing it.
So what are the more exotic explanations?
Well, swamp gas was one of them that people talked about.
I mean, like, there's the presumption that it's a ghost or something. Spook light,
Yeah, they call it the spook light.
So is there anyone trying to explain it like that? Or UFOs? Oh, it's an alien,
Okay.
No clue why an alien would be like
so here's a couple,
in that area.
Here's a couple other quotes. Brad Steiner in Occult magazine from 1970 said, numerous such spook lights haunt this planet, and so far all attempts at scientific explanation of their source or origin have been unsuccessful. Experts have tried to explain the phenomena away by using the existing structure of orthodox physics, but if we are ever to truly understand these mysterious fires and lights, we will have to go outside the existing framework to find the answers. For these ghost lights seem to shine directly from a world that transcends the material plane. Now, that was in the Occult magazine. Somebody else said, I don't know how the light got there. It just did. It was a ball of fire. After getting behind us, the light became two separate balls of fire, one immediately on top of the other. They were about a block or so away. The balls got together, I don't know how, and then it disappeared. Okay, so let me see if I can find some of these. Oh, somebody else says, I've lived here for 28 years and have never seen the spook light. In my opinion, the light is just an excuse kids use to come down on Lover's Lane. They drink, take drugs, and beat up each other. That's pretty funny. It was first seen in 1886. And when they say it was documented in 1886, they mean there was written evidence. So somebody wrote about it. It was in newspapers and other written records. And everybody knew about it by 1903. It was pretty much, everybody knew about it. It was just something you did. There was different stories about it. One said that it was a ghostly apparition from two Indian teenagers who were in love with one another. By Indian, I mean Native American teenagers who were in love with one another. And they committed suicide by leaping off of a rocky outcropping, which I think they now call it Lover's Leap. And that is in the area. That's actually at the end of the road, but more a little bit to the south of the road, of the end of the road. So that was one paranormal explanation. I think that most people, when they see it, they come to a conclusion. They come to a conclusion that it's a UFO or that it's, whatever, or they can't explain it. But I didn't hear anybody say, other than the Native American one, that they thought it was ghosts.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it almost to me lends it credibility that people are really seeing. Usually when people are like making something up or like, it's something that's really not happening, they immediately prescribe it an explanation, like, oh, it's ghosts, it's aliens, it's whatever. But if it's a real mystery, people will really be scratching their heads and saying, I just don't know. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we see in this case, which, it's like, okay, something mysterious is happening. What would you expect how would you expect people to actually react? Well, they would say, I don't know what's happening. I mean, that is the most reasonable thing to say in that situation.
Correct. If car lights are in fact the primary cause of the spook light, why have the sightings of the light become rarer in the past 40 years than they were in the previous years? Something to think about. I want to go back out there.
We could.
Well, we have to wait till it's not
You'd have to wait
deadly cold.
All night.
Yeah, you have to just kind of figure you're going to wait all night. So
fortunately, all the property is owned and they'd probably kill you.
Yeah, they probably would. That is true.
Probably not.
Well,
but they might come and bitch you out.
Yeah, it used to be a dirt road. Now it's not. It's paved. It used to only have a couple farms on it. Now it's, there's a lot of houses. There's some farms. It's a lot of different stuff. I really did want to see the spook light, but I was kind of scared to see it because it seems really freaky and
it's spooky.
And no one really knows what it is.
Yeah, maybe it gives you cancer or something. Consider this. Ghosts. What happens when a ghost passes through you? Maybe it gives you cancer. How would anybody know?
Okay, that is true.
You're next to a spook light. It's emitting radiation. You're getting a huge dose of radiation. How would you know?
That's an interesting point. I wonder if there is an electric power plant near there.
That implying like it's electrical?
Yeah.
Maybe. It's things like, oh, there's an underground vein of some conducting material, and because of the magnetic fields, and that there's like some place that's discharging electricity, it's creating this light. Could be.
Can you make ball
unlikely.
Lightning? Can you make ball lightning in a lab?
Yeah, but as far as I understand, it's pretty hard to do, It takes very specific conditions and...
Well, so when it comes right down to it, what do you think?
My own feeling is that people are seeing things and then they're embellishing things. So like they might actually see a lot. Like this person sees one light, this person sees a different kind of light, and then they're severely embellishing it. And after the first case of someone seeing a light over 100 years ago, there's a precedent for saying you saw.
So you don't think there is any light out there? Because I do think a good portion of them are embellishments.
I think that my own sense, my feeling is that there is no light. There's not like a spook light, you know. They're seeing things, whatever those things might be, and they're misinterpreting the situation. You know, like, oh, maybe this person did see the headlights for like a millisecond, and then they like are re-recording their memories, and it's that they're interpreting the situation wrong.
Well,
that's my own sense.
If we go out there again, we should figure on finding a place to park the car that we could leave it and it wouldn't get in trouble, and then go and sit hidden, you know, so that
and just wait.
With
the camera running.
With the camera. All
the time. That's one thing. Are there images of it?
Yes.
That's the one thing you want. Is even just to prove, even if to just show which direction it was, you know?
Okay, so here's a photo.
And I should say, photos are probably not good
this is just showing
enough.
the road. This just pictures the road. But it shows how the road has changed over the past few years.
Definitely.
That's
you can
quite
definitely see how hilly it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't really I can't say I don't believe in the spook light, and I definitely don't know the spook light doesn't exist, but I can say I feel like the spook light does not exist.
Our contact information is in the show notes. You can email us, text us, or even call and leave a 3-minute voicemail. And as always, if you have a story you want to tell, send it to us. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and never be so terrified you can't run.
You can't drive away from the spook light.